Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Thank you so much for joining us in another live session of VS Code on the VS Code channel. I am so excited for this particular live stream because we're going to be doing something that I've always loved experimenting with. So I'm not going to wait any more time, and I want to bring our guest up right away.
Hello, bonjour.
Hello, bonjour, David Roussett. Welcome to VS Code, the live stream, and thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. It's cool to be there.
Cool. So, by the way, just to get right into it, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing on the VS Code team?
Sure. So I'm an old Microsoftie, like you can see with my gray hairs. I've got 26 years of Microsoft now, so I'm still there, still having a lot of fun. And I've always been working for developers. I used to be a support engineer, then I became a consultant and evangelist, and now I'm inside the Core AI dev organization, where I'm in charge as a PM of a Visual Studio Code extension named AI Toolkit. AI Toolkit is there to help you to pick and evaluate models, either from Foundry, a model running locally on your machine, or in GitHub models, to be able to then implement that in your app, in your agent, or whatever. So this is part of what I'm working on. And also, I've been building a 3D engine in the past for Microsoft named Babylon.js. So it's being used by Microsoft today. So I'm a huge gamer. I love 3D, I love web. So that's why I thought, let's combine all those passion, AI, gaming inside VS Code.
Beautiful. All right. So the core of this demo that you're going to be doing is going to be about creating a game. But how is it different than some other people that just use some prompts to create games on the fly?
Yes, so it started with some experiment I did, and also to train some people, like even non-developer, on how powerful they can be now thanks to coding agents. So it's going to start as a classical vibe coding. So we're going to see now how powerful the model are to create well-known games. Maybe see some issue we will have, and how maybe to implement some first level of control with some calls to MCP server, MCP tools. We're going to see also how to deploy to Azure thanks to those same tooling, like we have got an Azure MCP. So we're going to try to do everything live. I've got kind of a backup content because sometimes deploying could take time. So we'll see a bunch of former example I did and former screenshot of game I was able to create with vibe coding. And then immediately the question I had with some kind of game developers too was, okay, but how to better control the UX, for instance? I would like really to have this type of, of character enemies being designed or UX. So we're going to see how to do that, and even going further with Spec Kit to be able to implement more complex feature of your game, such as a leaderboard. So this is everything I would like to cover during this session together.
Beautiful. I'm excited. And especially since you're going to include deployment. I feel like so many times that's ignored. It's like we build a lot of stuff, but then we don't talk too much about how to get it out there, So, well, let's just jump right in then.
Yeah, so I've got a slide deck that I will share with people at the end that is containing kind of everything we're going to see together. So you will see the agenda and some stuff you need to install on your machine if you like to do that at home too and be able to replay the same session. Feel free. I will share at the end the link to my repo where everything has been created and deployed, and you will have access to the deck. So the first part is to do classical vibe coding. And what I really love about this one, so this is my prompt that usually is working well. So, I'm lazy, I'm going to copy paste it. And I've been able to use this prompt with many type of people. So first developers, so we should see some really great code being generated. But I also being able to do a workshop. The last time I've been to Redmond, to kids of from 8 to 10, they were able to create games. And what was interesting for me is they were so creative that I was even inspired by how to tune the game design based on their feedback. They were even more open-minded than myself to ask to Copilot to do some specific gameplay. So I'm currently using the agent mode of GitHub Copilot. Claude Sonnet 4.5, I really love this model. I'm really used to this model. Opus work fine well, but you can try other models. And for now, I'm not going to use any of the MCP server I've got, the only built-in one of VS Code to let it generate all the files for me. So I'm going to ask to use the latest version of Node.js, the LTS version, because later on, we're going to change the way to generate the level from the server side. So let's give it a try. And as I've been creating a game myself in the past, I'm going to try to comment the code generated. So, well, you know that, Reynald, every time you do this type of stuff, you have kind of this live discovery. You never know what's really going to happen. So that's the beauty of that. So we see the thinking process. So he said it should create a package.json, and he has created the to-do list. So he's going to use Express. I'm not very surprised. He's going to create level configuration, the HTML5 game structure, the game logic, and the rendering part, and try to create a responsive Space Invader version of it. It sounds good to me. So now we need to wait for the code generation. So the first part, of course, if you're a Node.js developer, you won't be surprised. You see that it's taking kind of a good version of Node.js. Is going to use Express, and is going to start to implement the code. If we look to the code, you see that it's going to create an API for the levels with a level number. You have a function to generate the level with kind of the speed at which rate the enemy are going to fire. And well, very simple for now. So you see that now we have the step 3 out of 5. And now we're going to see normally the game structure itself, the client side. So you have the index.html. So normally the best way to create this type of game is to use the canvas element, which is the case, and it puts it, in a wrapper with some control information. The pose. What I really love about that is most of the time, it even takes care of the, the posing screen, like it manages the pose state. So everything is super clean. Regarding the CSS, also, most of the time is going to manage properly, the responsive part. You see that you can use CSS-free animation. It's going to use some modern layout like the flex element. So a lot of stuff being done for me. And then it tries to do a responsive design. And at last, normally, it should work on the game logic to generate the client-side version of the game itself. So all the JavaScript code to manage a canvas element. So we need to wait for it.
So quick question. When you're going through these steps, do you prefer to wait till the very end and then decide to keep or undo anything? Or do you sometimes keep along the way while it's
it's a good question. Good question. Usually, what I do at the beginning is to do a first vibe coding version, check how it goes. You see that it's so fast. I don't know, like it maybe took 5 minutes to create this game. And if I like it, I'm going to keep it and improve it. And then I'm going to, to init my repo on Git to be able to have my, code management. But sometimes it's too far away from what I had in mind because maybe I wasn't precise enough in my prompts. So I tend to start from scratch, and restart from scratch and be more precise, modify my prompt. And once I reach a level where I think like the base material is good enough, I know I will be able to iterate on that. Yes, I put in place Git management to be sure that I can navigate to many branches, because sometimes doing pure vibe coding, you can break part of the game you could like.
Right. So you mentioned regarding like the prompt. So the prompt that you started off with, was that the very first prompt that you thought about when you were prepping for this demonstration? Or did you find yourself having to modify the prompt and then you've came up with, after like maybe 4 iterations, this is a nice prompt to start this demonstration with?
Good question. Like, to be honest, for this one, I was pretty lucky. Like, it started where I had some friends. We've been traveling to Japan and they are gamers. And I was telling them, I'm going to show you the future of video game potentially. And I thought like, what kind of game could I create? And I said, let's create a Space Invader. And I even didn't say HTML5 at the beginning. I just said, create a Space Invader. And then GitHub Copilot and the LLM decided to pick HTML5, which was, I think, a great choice because it's very easy then to play with it, prototype with it, and share with your friends. But then later on, I thought like maybe one day it could be tempted to use, I don't know, an Android stack or whatever. So I then started to modify to be more precise because I'm still a developer myself, but I feel more comfortable with HTML and Node.js. So I wanted to be sure to be able to understand the code and modify it. But outside of that, like most of the time, this simple prompt can really create really impressive games.
Okay. So
if we have a look to the source code, you see that we have a class player. We have the canvas draw API to be able to, to fill the canvas as any classical game. The move, the shoot, the update sequence, we have bullets, we have enemies. When you look to the code, like, the first time I did that in front of some of my developer friends, they were like, wow, the game code seemed pretty clean. So, and at the end, it should tell me how to start the game. So npm start. And I think we're going to discover live if the game is good or not.
All right, here we go.
So first, I guess I forgot to do npm install. There it is. And now the game should be there. Let's play it. So you see, like, in one prompt, we have something already working well. I don't know what you think about that.
No, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and sometimes it could be even better, but like he managed to have this kind of retro style, for Space Invader. Well, the main issue about this kind of prompt is you could spend your life playing to the game after that. And stop working at all. But you see, like the material looks good to me. So what you can do next? So for instance, for now, I don't have sounds. So you see, this is another example of some kind of output I had with the same model.
Mm-hmm.
But like, this is really the way I did live with some of my friends. When they saw that, they were really impressed already, and they said like, okay, but you don't have any sounds. And I thought like, okay, so let's move forward. So I'm going to keep that. And then, I'm going to ask to the agent to add some sound. So maybe your question was really interesting on the prompt. I've been doing a 3D engine, and I was implementing also the audio engine part of it. So I know the web audio API, for instance. So I was tempted to already guide the agent to use the web audio API, because using this API, you can generate some sound live, in a procedural way. And I thought it was better than trying to find some MP3 or wave somewhere to play that. And regarding the sounds, I don't touch anything else than on the UX, because it happened in the past when you wanted also to update the layout to manage a lot of the sounds. It doesn't always listen. We're going to see. Sometimes it tries to modify the UX. So let's try to add sounds now. If I wasn't precising, I would like to use web audio. most of the time is going to use this tag. But just before this session, this morning, I was rehearsing, and it's for the first time he did something different. He decided to encode a wave in base 64 and to create a sound element with that to be able to play the sound. So you always have some surprise when you're too vague. You see what I mean?
Yeah. And if you didn't specify web audio, like what's the main difference between the other one that you said it was going to use?
Web audio is very convenient because it's really low-level sound when you can really control and create the waves yourself. Otherwise, it could be tempted to just use the audio element, HTML5, and ask you to provide wave or MP3, sound effects yourself. But to be honest, most of the time, the LLM I was using are clever enough to understand that your context is a Space Invader game. So you're looking for retro sounds. And, I don't know how old you are, but when I was young, the game were creating the sounds purely using code. We weren't, loading wave because it was taking way too much space. So it's clever enough to be able to really create games like we used to do in the past.
Nice. Okay.
And you see, so what he said is for the player shot is going to be a high-pitch laser. Then you see the various type of wave generation is going to use with web audio. Then you see he's using an oscillator. If you're not a web audio expert, it doesn't talk to you, but for me, it makes sense. He's going to create some nodes and connect them together. So now we can refresh the game.
Meanwhile, we have like some comments coming in. Sure. They mentioned, I guess the next time we're in where we have the slides, if we could be in presentation mode. But Abraham asked if we can use VS Code for machine learning.
For machine learning, you mean like to train a model or stuff like that? What is the? Yes. Yeah, you can. For instance, it's interesting. My extension. So maybe we can do a slight break there. My extension named AI Toolkit is there. It's not specifically for machine learning, but we have a part when you can fine-tune some models. So prepare some model and transform some model to fine-tune them. For machine learning, there is, of course, stuff you can do with. I need to stop Outlook to inside VS Code, but this is not my area of expertise, unfortunately. I'm more a user of AI than a builder of models. But what I know is I can fine-tune some existing models. And if it's pure machine learning, yeah, I know there is a lot of stuff, but I wouldn't be able to answer your question, Ibrahim, unfortunately.
All right. Yeah, Abraham, if you have like a more specific reason why you asked that question, then maybe he might be able to shed some light there. Oh, there he is, or she is. Please, can you do a video to explain more about it?
About machine learning or about the fine-tuning? About the fine-tuning, if you search for AI Toolkit in your favorite search engine, you will be able to quickly land, there on our repo. And then you will have some part explaining you how to do some fine-tuning, of your model. So, you will have all the content you like to. Please have a look. And we have also content on YouTube to explain how to use AI Toolkit.
Nice. Cool. Thank you for that.
So let's try the game with the sounds.
Yeah.
Wait. Can you hear it?
Oh, there you go.
So you see, this is purely generated with web audio. So once again, I wasn't, it was easy just to generate that. For now, it doesn't fire. So I guess because this is level 1 and he decided that it should be super easy, but they should be able to fire too. So this is a way to do that. And what I was impressed by the young kids, doing that. Oh, they're fire, but super rarely. For instance, the Space Invader game got walls, and then so the kids decided to add the walls, to add some power-ups. So you can ask to the LLM to add shield, additional life. And even one of the young guy decided to say, like, I would like to have auto aim, meaning that let's imagine you have walls and you like the fire to get around the walls to target the enemies. It was fine. And if
Kind
you
of like
think,
a heat-seeking missile where it just
yeah,
follows the
exactly.
target.
And when you think about that, it's not that easy to code when you're not used to code this type of stuff, but the LLM nailed it, and for the kid, it was obvious, was just asking to have auto aim.
Yeah. And how old was the kid again?
It was 8.
8. Oh man,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And they were so pleased to be able to create this type of them. So at this level, they were able to modify the colors, the UX. They were like, one of the little girls decided to say like, okay, when the enemy are going to explode, I want to have little art, it was cute because she wanted to not have any sort of violence while playing to the Space Invader game. So it's already super powerful for a lot of people. You see what we just seen.
Yeah. When I blow up the ship, I want a lot of flowers to come out.
Exactly. Yeah. And I did that just before the Christmas break. And of course, the people created like everything related to the Christmas theme for the Space Invaders. So you can now build your own game. And you see, we even have the pause menu being managed, and it's going to stop the rendering loop. So I think this is already pretty good. And I tried it with more modern LLMs. It's even better, of course, but it could take more time to generate.
So Claude, from your opinion, was like the fastest in getting the work done that you needed?
Yes, Claude Sonnet 4.5 for me is like the right balance. I've been using Opus recently. It was going even further in the quality of the game. But like it takes more time. So it depends on you, how fast you like to have immediate gratification and see something and iterate on it. Or do you want to have the model spending more time thinking and designing the game? So it's up to you. And this is where people need to play with the models to find, what is best for them.
Nice. Derp Magician says, I usually choose to work with a library for go less blind with the possible errors.
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Which type of library is he talking about in terms of code? Could you expand on that, Magician, Derp Magician? Also, here's the next.
Yeah, good question. The next one is, do I always go straight into agent mode, even from scratch? Yes, so excellent question. It really depends. And I think this is where, when you are developers, I guess, the complexity of what you have in mind if you would implement it yourself. For instance, I would have never tried to create the Space Invader from scratch, I don't know, 1 or 2 years ago, because I knew the model weren't smart enough or, good enough to do that in one shot. Now I know that they could do it, so I would be tempted to do that from scratch in agent mode. For the plan mode, before the plan mode was available, I was using Spec Kit for the leaderboard part. For the leaderboard part, I was thinking about it, and I was like, it's more complex than in a way than the game itself, because you need to be able to have people signing in with their GitHub account, Google account, or Microsoft account. You need to have a DB, local DB, to be able to store the iScore, to manage the logging part. So I decided more to use the equivalent of the plan mode for that, because I was convinced that using classical vibe coding would probably put me in a bad spot. But it was based on my own experience. And I think this is going to evolve over time based on the complexity and power of the models.
So what was your step before using like models when software developing, like old school? What steps did you used to go through in terms of like, how did you plan before you execute, before you actually started coding? What was your strategy and how has that changed now?
You mean before this new plan mode and how?
Yeah.
Yes. So in the past, I was trying to more generate little quantity of code in a way. I would be tempted, for instance, you say I see the play explosion, for instance, in front of me. Maybe I would be tempted in the past to say like, okay, I would cut in my mind the various, stuff to implement. And I would say like, okay, I would like to create an HTML5 canvas, small boilerplate. And I would start from there. And then I would say, okay, now I would like to add a JavaScript part to manage some of the player basics. And I would iterate by small parts, now, and this is maybe an open debate always, but with a lot of my friends, the more you trust specific models because you've been able to check, you was able to go, very far with, some good prompts. Now I'm tempted to give it like more longer task. Say like, do that, and I trust it most of the time. I just need to review it quickly and maybe fine tune some of the results. But more and more I'm going that direction, and for more complex, bunch of features to be implemented, I'm then using the plan mode or Spec Kit.
And so how do you go about testing it? Because that's like one of the big things that people are concerned about, that especially for like newer developers that might depend so much on prompting that they don't spend that much on testing, and therefore there's a lot of like code that's not too efficient or secure. How do you go about like validating what the work did so that you feel that, if this is good, that I could actually deploy and put out there in production for important clients?
This is an excellent question. Well, first, it reminds us that this is a copilot, meaning that this is not to replace you. So you need to still review the architecture, the code itself, and check some best practices. Fortunately, we also have kind of a set of tools to help you to do this type of reviews. So what we are working on, for instance, is to, on top of approaches like Spec Kit, is to inject, some additional context and guidance to the model to say, these are the type of basic security stuff you need to review. So of course, it's up to some architects or senior developer to dump really important principle as input to the LLM, to let the LLM check that. But he won't replace the importance of a human to review that and do some unit testing, functional testing, even if what I'm trying to do is to, even for functional testing, to use also Copilot to help me doing that for me. So today I would say that, of course, we know that you can go super quickly to a very good prototype. And then to go to production, you need the help of skills developers, senior developers. This is the way I'm working today. As a PM, I'm doing a lot of prototyping myself. And then I'm working with a bunch of developers to review what I did and let them decide, how far they would like to keep the code generated and if they need to review the architecture. But for the architecture too, we have MCP server that could be helpful.
Nice. Okay.
Okay.
So Magician actually responded about his library comment. He says, I usually choose frameworks for 3D or 2D graphics.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Interesting question. So for people maybe that are not aware about how to create video games, you have two major options, I would say, today. Either you start from scratch, which is very rare now, that you're building yourself everything, the 3D engine, the game logic, everything, or you're using a framework or an engine. So it could be Unity, it could be Unreal, it could be frameworks on the web. So you have 3.js, you have Babylon.js that I've been co-writing, which is also a 3D engine. Of course, it's better to use an engine, because then you have a lot of features that has been tested working well. And the beauty of that is, one of the version I did of Space Invader was asking to the LLM, I would like to create a 3D Space Invader using Babylon.js, because it's a 3D engine I know pretty well. And now the model are also so good that they can also use the existing libraries to implement the code to them. So yes, it's really going to depend. Sometime, for instance, if I would say create me a 3D version of something, most of the time the LLM could also pick itself an existing library, because it knows that it will be easier to do than creating everything from scratch completely.
Nice.
And you're right, like the what he was sharing is like, if you're using a library, you're lowering down the chance of having issues, because the library has been tested by many people. So like, at least you're almost sure that the library itself is stable, and then you just need to focus on reviewing the code, coding the library. So it's a great feedback.
Excellent.
For Space Invader, you see, you don't have a lot of code to review, and it's an easy game to design. So that's why I wanted to go that direction.
I wonder what the people that first developed this game are thinking now. They're like, we spent a year developing this game.
Yeah, I think for juniors developer, it's very interesting, because let's imagine you have never designed a game. Maybe you see this type of how to move stuff, how to do collision stuff, like the bullet, for instance, the update logic. It could be very interesting. This code is really good enough for people to train themselves, on how to build a game, because all games are built like that. You have an update, a draw, a loop, and then you have collision tests and stuff like that. So I think regarding if it's really fascinating for me for educational, content that could be built for you based on the game you have in your mind, and learn from it. So that's why I really love this approach too.
You know what I did the other day? Because of what you're saying, it's a good way to like learn how to do things appropriately, especially if the model did a good job. I created a custom instruction to create a tutorial for each application that I ask it to do. So like after it generated the app, the last step would be like, now let me go ahead and give you the steps to manually do it that you could follow. So I feel like that helps a little.
Yes, you're right. It's often I'm making this joke that when I'm using GitHub Copilot to generate this type of POC or even project, the README that it generates is better than most developer would do. So because it tends to be very good in educating the future people using your code to say like, this is the architecture, this is how to install the various dependencies, something that, as a developer, you could forget about, or you're not super passionate about, writing that down. AI is very good in that. Like you said, you can ask to even analyze your existing project and say like, please review my project and create kind of a tutorial for a beginner. This is really, really great for that.
Yeah.
So the next steps, maybe we should move to the next step.
Yes.
Is I wanted to show to people something I had in mind. Is okay, now I've got a game. I was able to add sounds. Maybe I would be able to fine-tune the gameplay with more enemies, with kind of power up like the kid did. But what I wanted to evaluate is it could be fun to maybe have some kind of logic running to analyze how good or bad you are playing to the game, and then give that context to an AI, to an LLM, so that it can generate the level, based on that. So I wanted to experiment that. So this is the prompt I'm going to inject there. And for that also, I need to enable another MCP, which is AI Toolkit, the product I'm working on. So what we are exposing, AI Toolkit, is a way really for you to have access to models. So you can have access model from GitHub models, you can from Foundry, or even model running locally, because I've got a big GPU, so I can even run, AI on my local machine. And also what we are doing is we are exposing this extension, this library, as a MCP server, so it can guide the code generation on the way to use the LLM. Something frequent I've heard from developer I'm talking to is, I would love to experiment LLM, but I never know how to start, because maybe I need an Azure subscription, but someone is owning the Azure subscription in my company, and it takes time to let me access to it, to find the keys, or to have access to it in a general manner. And I don't want to spend a lot of money just to see if something makes sense. So this is exactly what I'm sharing in the prompt. I said, okay, now let's generate the level using a call to LLM on the server side. Please suggest me a model I could use for free to build my POC, but allowing me to later switch to a production model. So this was really what I had in mind. It's like, let's imagine I don't know anything about that. This is what I would love to do. And using the AI Toolkit MCP server, we should see that Claude should pick up the MCP tool for that and try to guide the code generation. So let's see how smart Claude will be.
So someone mentioned that the toolkit link is slow on DNS. Is that something that happens often, or it depends on the time of the day?
Which link? What do you mean?
The AI at Suvatar says that AI toolkit link is very slow on DNS.
You mean the access to the marketplace? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
maybe
not sure.
maybe you could elaborate, Suvatar.
Yes, please, Suvatar, to be sure that I understood what you mean. And thanks for the aka.ms. So you see that in between, so it was able to use model guidance from AI Toolkit, and is going to say okay, I'm going to use GitHub models for your POC. I'm going to recommend you a GPT-4 Omni because it should be enough for what you like to do. It's free to start, and you will be able later on to switch to Foundry if you like to. And instead going to update the code of the server to be able normally to, you see it just being updated, to use the right SDK, and then to use the endpoint of GitHub model. So for people that don't know, you have access, if you have a GitHub subscription, you have a free quota to be able to call some LLM deployed by GitHub. So it's very easy to access to, and then using the same endpoint, you can later on switch to OpenAI models, using your private key or Foundry models. So it's a great way to quickly experiment for free if you've got a GitHub subscription, of course. So you see that now it's going to generate the levels with AI. And what is really fun is going to even to create the prompt for me to ask the LLM to do the work.
Okay.
Okay, so we have an issue, so it should review what's going on and fix it.
That is one of the most amazing things that I really love about how our AI works. It's when we come into issues and then it starts troubleshooting.
Yeah, I love
on
that
its own.
too.
I like that so much. That is amazing.
It's really amazing, and while he's trying to fix it, so it should be able to fix it. Let's wait for it. But while he tries to fix it, I had recently took some part of my former PC to build another one for my girlfriend, and I had some issues. Like the PC was freezing, and I thought probably a driver issue. I don't know what's going on, and I asked to Copilot, okay, I've got issues. I went into the Windows, Event Explorer, and I took some errors from Event Explorer. And he said oh, it could be either a driver issue, it could be, something not connected correctly to power your GPU. He said but give me the dump. If you have a dump, a memory dump of it, I can analyze it. And I was super surprised. I was can he analyze dumps? So I drag and drop the dumps, and he said like, oh, now I'm sure it's a GPU issue. Try to do that and this, and I was able to fix it.
Wow.
Using AI, and I was like, wow, it would have taken me so much time to do that myself.
Yeah. I wonder if memory leaks are even an issue nowadays. Remember that used to be a thing, memory leaks.
Okay, so you see, you managed to fix it. Oh, it's already running somewhere else. Okay, I should have stopped it. Okay. But he can see that it's in use on the same port, and sometimes he is just going to kill the current server. But okay, let's wait for it. But I'm pretty sure he managed to do it. So if we review the code, okay, let it try to fix that, and it should now try to run the code. You see, AI power level, I think it's for my marketing campaign, it's going to let me being super successful with my game. And so he was able to check that, okay, this is running fine. And now it's being using the GitHub models, because if you look to the code, so let's lower down that. If you look to the code, the way it's calling the model is using a GitHub token. So I don't know if people know that, but if you go in your GitHub settings, you can create a personal access token there, create a classic token. And then using this token, this is a key in a way to be able to call the GitHub models for free. Once again, for free means that you have a GitHub subscription. But now I can open the page and it should work. So let's try to, I'm going to stop the execution of it and open that there and refresh. And now it should maybe take more time because it needs to call the LLM. And now let's check it if I have some issues. No issues. And I would need to debug the code to show you that it was going to call the LLM in GitHub. But for now, it doesn't sound so different from my models. So maybe what I need to do to improve that is to fine-tune the prompt generated by AI Toolkit to be able to have a better management of the complexity. But you see that in one call, once again, using MCPs, I was able to, I asked to shut down Outlook. I was able to generate a lot of code to do the call to the LLM for me and include that into my game.
All right.
Okay, so the last part I wanted to do live. Now that we were able to create a game, to add sounds, maybe add some gameplay, to add a call to LLM thanks to MCP call. Another very useful MCP is one that's going to deploy to Azure this time. So what I'm going to do is this time, rather than using AI Toolkit MCP, is to use the Azure MCP server that you can install, from our GitHub, and you can find it on our documentation too, or you will find the link into the PowerPoint deck I will share. So, and I'm going to select it. And now I'm going to ask, can you deploy that to Azure? So what's going to happen? There is many kind of option in Azure available. So the beauty of this MCP server is to review the existing project. So you should see that, okay, you have a Node.js backend, you have a client-side game, maybe an app service should be enough, using a Linux, for instance, VM in a way, and I'm going to configure all that and deploy, from there. So we're going to see how it managed to do that. So once again, Claude should be able to see that it's better to call these MCPs than trying to guess itself how to deploy your, your project to Azure.
So for someone that's new to Azure, what do they need to know to have it set up so that they could try to deploy something to Azure? Could they use a free account? do they have to have like a paid subscription? What's the minimum that they need to get this done?
Yes, great question. You need to have, so you have free version of Azure to start with some credits to start with. If you are a Visual Studio subscriber, you can have access. Like what I'm doing myself is to use my Azure subscription. I've got a certain amount of money to spend every month, so I'm using my own subscription. So yes, you need to create first an account on the Azure portal, and then you need to log on with your the right account inside VS Code, so that it can use your credential to potentially have access to Azure and see what it needs to do.
Okay.
And also something you need to do, we have two CLI that are well known. One is AZ, so you need to install AZ also before doing that, because maybe potentially the LLM is going to require it. And another one is AZD, which is Azure Developer. So you need to install those ones to get ready for it. Once again, I shared that inside the PowerPoint, things you need to install, so people will be able to see that they need to have the Azure CLI tools, Azure Developer CLI, potentially GitHub Copilot for Azure, but the main one is really Azure MCP and those two CLI to be able to help Copilot to do its work. So this is where it could take time. So usually it takes from 5 to 10 minutes. Because it's going to learn about the various capabilities, and then it should create what we call biceps files. So I'm not a biceps expert myself, so that's why I love that AI is helping me. And you see it's going to start to generate some files. So you see that it's going to configure a project to use JavaScript, to use an app service. So this is what it has decided to go for. And now it should create the various files to do the deployment and help me to create the various resource group and stuff, the Azure resources for that.
Okay.
So we have two options. Either we are lucky to go fast. Maybe there is some question I can answer while it's working. And I've got the fallback otherwise. But I see an interesting question. I saw that many of the game classes live in a single file. Would it make sense to ask the agent to refactor this later so the cost is easier to maintain? Excellent question, Jonas. Sometimes the AI is directly splitting the various, I would say, classes in the separate files. Sometimes it put everything inside a single file. This is where my initial prompt could be better. Maybe I should say, I should maybe just clarify that right at the beginning, saying like, please use best practices, development practices by splitting every, part of the game in separate files for maintenance, and it would have done that. So it's going relatively fast to do that. Otherwise, another approach would be to use the plan mode or the Spec Kit approach to this time clarify that with the LLM before asking it to generate the code.
Yeah, I wonder how best practices have changed now with the existence of all the AI that can generate the code. Like, is it that important to have it in separate files? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. This is interesting, as maybe this is more a philosophical discussion, because I still think it's better also for us to review, because potentially you have to maintain the code, even if you can ask AI to maintain the code he has generated. But maybe because I'm old now, I tend to also, like Jonas, prefer to have everything in separated files, so I can, for instance, just focus on the player classes or on the enemy classes when I'm going to maybe fine-tune the code myself. But maybe if you do everything with AI doesn't really care. Maybe for the context, window, it's better to have stuff in separated files. I'm not sure.
Right. It's like the concept of like using interfaces. There are some people feel like it conceptually it makes sense for certain situations, but if your project's like really not that huge, it might be an overkill to have a bunch of interfaces. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. So we see that the agent pod is checking, you see my AZD version, so he's happy with my version. So it means that he's going to prepare everything to get ready for deployment. So he has created many things, everything, all the configuration file, infrastructure as code to be ready based on the analysis he did of my game. Then he has to log on my Azure account.
Jonas had a good point. He mentioned that by having a very large single file, it could be more expensive because of like the amount of tokens that are being used.
This is what I was wondering too. It's that's why I think that not only it's good for to respect what we had as best practices, but for also for us. So now we ask to provide. So I'm going to ask an environment name. I would say live Space Invader. He asked for my subscription. Enter the environment name. I'm going. You want an environment name? Okay, so I'm going to say Space Invaders Live.
Someone spoke in French. They're like, "Hello, votre code in Python." I don't know if they just wanted to practice their French or if it's a real question.
So the code is in JavaScript for this game. It could have been Python, but I do prefer JavaScript. Even if I'm not in love with a specific language, but usually he asks me for
TypeScript.
Yeah, TypeScript. I'm using it a lot. Yeah. Okay, location. Usually I've got a list of stuff available. So let's put like West Europe. I don't know if it's what he's looking for.
So right now we're entering the information for it to be deployed, right? The credentials for Azure.
Yes, now what it's trying to do is to prepare everything to provision in Azure what is required for the game, which is a Node.js backend. But you see that I had an issue because usually it directly gives me a list of places where to put the stuff.
Okay.
So that's why maybe I can show you a session I did just before, because I see that we are running out of time. So I can show you what I did before with this prompt. So you see that I started the very same way, but using Opus 4.5. Then I added the GitHub model call, that the LLM call.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one was deploy that to Azure. And what it did is has generated many stuff. It had an issue the first time it tried to, but it was able to recover, like we were discussing just before. It's not always working the first time, but most of the time it can recover. So yeah, he did a mistake on the bicep file. So like, oh yeah, that's right. I didn't need to put that in the biceps files. It's really fun to see talking to itself in a way. And then it was able to deploy that to Azure. So I did that like 3 hours ago. So I'm going to open this version, which is slightly different from the one we've seen just before. But you see that this was using Opus this time. And you see that he decided to create the Space Invader in a different way. Because it's like a small pixel, like the original concept in the way. He was going a step further, and he decided to put walls to protect me. But like I was sharing, he's not using web audio for the sound. He's using another approach. People could test the game. This is what he was able to deploy to. Otherwise, we can maybe try to give it a new test there. No, I think it's going to let's stop for now. Let's give it another try. Otherwise, it's live. I was hoping that everything would work immediately, but you know how it is.
Nope, that's the live presentation gods speaking.
Yeah. But like most of the time, to be honest, it's working really well. And I wanted to keep people honest. I had a session where I deployed this game, for instance, and this game had a lot of things included. It's got logging to GitHub, etc. And this is a recording I did of the deployment. It took me like half an hour, to let the AI to fix some of the issue. One of the issue I had, and he was able to fix it at the end, is I had an error 500 once it was deployed, and I wasn't able to find why. And you see that he was able to get the logs automatically. I mean, Claude, with the help of Azure MCP, was able to say like, okay, you have a 500 error. I'm going to gather the log. Inside the log, he was able to analyze this log that we currently see on the screen and says like, okay, I see what's going on. You're using NoSQL DB, in your Node.js project that, by default, you're running inside WSL and you have access to the full hard drive. We have this architecture constraint in Azure. You cannot write everywhere. This is why you currently have an issue. So let me fix a way to write, on the disk to be able to redeploy that to Azure. And it was able to fix that. And I was really super impressed because I was discovering this architecture specifics of Azure. And a little bit the same like the dump of Windows. It would have taken me a lot of time to read the logs and understand what was going on.
Yeah. Good times we're in, Yeah.
So this is everything I wanted to show to people. In the rest of the presentation, I'm showing to people how to use Figma to be maybe, let's imagine you like to, as a game designer, you like to control really the UX part of it. When you can just reference the Figma. And I was super pleased to discover that there is a Figma board for Space Invader there.
What?
Yeah. So I was like, whoa, super cool. So what I did is let's use it with with Copilot and the Figma MCP. So I've been generating it. So let me show you quickly the output of it. So what I did is reuse simply the same prompts that I've shown you, and I asked, please use the Figma MCP to implement the UX. And this is what it did. He managed to create the game exactly like the Figma board. So this is the first way I wanted to show people to better control the UX. So another great way to control the UX is to this time use another MCP. And I already tried that, is to simply use the Playwright MCP. So I don't know if people are aware of it. So let me go there. If you go there, you can have the Playwright MCP. And this time what I ask to GitHub Copilot is, okay, pay attention to the UX, do screenshot of the UX with Playwright, and please be sure that you have nothing on top of the canvas element. Because sometimes he puts some UX on top of the gaming zone and it makes it difficult to play to the game. So you can try that at home. And I did a video on my LinkedIn on that, where it's going to generate screenshot and auto-inspect itself in a way to be able to avoid doing too much mistakes. So it's fascinating to see because you can see like, okay, I see this UX is not good enough. It's going to change the the resolution to simulate mobile or tablets to see if everything works well in the various mode. So I think it's very powerful to potentially do, UX or functional testing using Playwright MCP.
Nice.
And the last part, of course, when you like to debug in production, you can still use AI to fix some code in production, or use the SRE agent. You were talking about memory leak. We have an agent now that can monitor, your app and potentially fix some issues for you or warn you that there is some production issues to help you with AI.
Nice. Beautiful. This was awesome. This is awesome. It's always great to have like demonstrations that are visually appealing, and especially when it's something that a lot of people could relate to, because many people have experimented with video games. So to see that you have now the power to create your own through using our VS Code AI, yeah, that's like really good.
Yes, and for a new generation of game designer, maybe, because now, like you said, people have the feeling that, oh, I can create a video game now. Of course, if the code is not perfect, you need to learn code also, maybe at one stage.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's a super powerful productivity boost. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, David. So for people that have followed along in this stream and want to stay in touch with you, what's the best way to keep in touch with
Yes,
your
so
fans?
first they can go on my GitHub, which is github.com/DAVROUS, and you will find a repository there where I will put the slides.
Okay.
You have the Space Invader with a leaderboard Azure ready. I'm not very good in naming, but this is basically everything I was generating using the full flow we've just seen, and I will put the deck there. Otherwise, you can ping me on X also, or you can send me an email, davrous@microsoft.com.
Beautiful. Well, this was awesome. Thanks so much for doing this together. I mean, putting this all together for us and presenting it. And for everyone else that joined, thanks for joining the stream. I also want to remind you guys that we do have like our TikTok channel, so make sure to follow us there. Producer, if you could throw that up on the screen, our link for TikTok and also for YouTube if you're not subscribed to us. And yeah, that will be it for now. And once again, thanks for joining. See you guys in the next stream.
Let's beat some games. See you.